All right, everyone, returning to the topic of Twitter and tech censorship for the third time today, now we have to talk about Mark Zuckerberg's bemused reaction at Twitter, which I'm sure, in the 24 hours since then, I'm sure his reaction is even more chuckling at this point now that Twitter's decided to poke the bear yet again. Twitter has begun to occasionally fact-check Trump's tweets with regards to election material. And Jack Dorsey sees this as a virtuous thing because he went off to Burma, a human rights abusing country, and he went into a meditation seminar for a few months, and he felt enlightened because he dropped acid a couple of times. And he's one of those classic dude bro college dudes. Here's Jack Dorsey in a nutshell. He's one of those dudes who listened to an Alan Watts documentary and read a couple of books on success in Buddhism, and now thinks that his shit don't stink and that he's very, very super intelligent. He's like Elon Musk if Elon Musk were half as intelligent as he is, in other words, and not given over to actually engineering anything of use. That's Jack Dorsey. Mark Zuckerberg, to his credit, is more intelligent than Jack Dorsey. He is also more well-spoken. It's not saying a lot, and of course, Mark Zuckerberg is actually a robot, but that being said, it's funny to see even Zuckerberg, who loves censorship. He's always talking about how great it is to kick the ass of those bigots over there. He goes into Congress and justifies a million ways in which they suppress user information, again, on a site that was built out of the concept of a very laissez-faire system, just like Twitter was. Just like YouTube was. All of these sites were extremely free market of ideas, extremely laissez-faire with very, very little censorship up until the last few years. A lot of people don't even remember that. Like the Gen Z kids, they're being raised on platforms that are considerably inferior to what they used to be maybe 10 years ago. Zuckerberg, of all people, coming out and targeting Jack Dorsey and saying, well, we don't think that Facebook should be the arbiter of all truth. Dorsey literally forced to respond by this particular allegation saying, oh, it's not what I'm saying. And then he goes off into his weird spew. Dorsey does this. He did this when he was talking on Joe Rogan with Tim Pool. Tim Pool would grill him, and then Jack Dorsey would basically shrug and look down and do that Gen X fucking slacker thing and give a non-answer with a lot of roundabout sort of illogical bullshit, a lot of circular reasoning, and a lot of asides to his legal counsel, who of course he demanded was there alongside him. It was very, very funny to watch his inability to actually address any of the problems that users on his site have actually brought up. There's a reason for this. He's full of shit. Now, I'm going to keep using Twitter, of course. It's a good notification machine, and occasionally it's funny to go after Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton when they say something dumb, which is most days. That being said, as far as being a fair political platform or useful for any larger purpose, it's really not. Basically, the only other purpose for it is it's great for messaging people. People can send news tips and stuff, and I don't have to add them on Facebook. That's helpful, I suppose, but that's basically the only thing to do on Twitter. Highly censorious. Jack Dorsey showing himself to be inferior to Zuckerberg, which is, again, funny. Zuckerberg's not anti-censorship. He's no libertarian. He was kind of left libertarian in the abstract sense. Of course, there's no such thing as a socialist libertarian. We've already covered that. Maybe a decade ago, and would face off against government, and here sign this petition against SOPA and ACTA and PIPA. You remember those good old days? When the government was the main antagonist, when the government was trying to censor us and tax the internet and everything? Oh Lord, were those great days, because the power of Silicon Valley at the time was used to oppose censorship, to oppose monopolization, ironically enough, to oppose external takeovers of the tech market, to protect it reasonably under the U.S. Constitution, because most of them are U.S. firms. Oh man, those were the days. Back when Wikipedia and Yahoo and Firefox and all of these other groups and services would tell you to sign a petition because otherwise the internet would break. Now, unfortunately, these groups are all trying to break the internet themselves. Hell, the writing was on the wall 3 years ago when Firefox announced that in partnership in part with the Open Society Foundation, they would be building fact-checking algorithms into their browser. And of course, on that day, I stopped using Firefox, and I've never looked back because it's infinitely inferior now. I started using Firefox because Internet Explorer sucked ass. Then Firefox started sucking ass, and now I have to trade off. I know Brave is a good browser, but I trade off usually between Pale Moon and Opera. Opera, I think, is Chinese run, ironically enough, and yet less algorithmically throttled than all of the alternatives. Oh boy, isn't that goddamn ironic. And I mean, again, for Jack Dorsey to think that he can fact-check election-related tweets, like the tweet in question days ago, had to do with mail-in ballots. And Trump claiming, of course, that the move away from in-person voting was an attempt at potentially fraud in the election. That is feasibly true. And for Twitter, again, run by a multi-billionaire, a major for-profit corporation, run by a billionaire, is going to fact-check election content for hundreds of millions of people. I don't think that that's proper. It's certainly not pragmatic. Allowing that leverage, allowing that amount of editorial power to these companies, in the strictest sense, already violates existing legislation designed to protect them from lawsuits. I talked about that earlier. This almost feels like a day where all of my videos are on the same fucking subject. Why don't I just make 1 hour-long rant where I just sit there saying shit into the microphone over and over again in frustration? They're all linked together. A bunch of billionaires are trying to usurp the political process. That's basically what's happening. And people on the left, supposedly liberal individuals, they've fallen for the bait hook, line, and fucking sinker. They've gobbled up the whole line. They've started to eat the rod and reel. Next, they're going to eat the boat and the dude who's fishing. It's nuts. It's funny to see them jump when a bunch of billionaires say jump because they've got Trump derangement syndrome so bad. They're so goddamn terrified of one politician that they're willing to let a bunch of billionaires who have bought half of Congress off tell them what to do and what to think. What books they can read. Hey, they're trying to pressure Amazon to censor things now too. Oh my God, there's a book on here and it says bad words. It expresses views we don't like. You better remove it, Jeff, or we're going to target your advertisers. Maybe we should address that, because that seems to be the one main chink in the armor, so to speak. The one weakness, the one glaring problem is advertiser money that props up the Silicon Valley firms. Maybe if we could address that problem, then it would make those lynch mobs disappear when they realize, of course, that there's no effect from whining and caroning about what is on these sites. Of course, the lynch mobs will tend to die down over time on their own. That's about all. Peace out.